Every time this guy needed a new driver's license, he stuck it to the man in the most insane fashion.
But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to Did You Know and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now.
Most people dread the deadly dull trip to the Department of Motor Vehicles, but 31-year-old comedian Jono Zale would entertain himself every time. The California native had settled in several states as an adult and would require new driver's IDs for each one. Each visit to the DMV became a personal challenge. How could he stick it to the man with his visual proof of identity? They say a picture paints 1,000 words, and Zale came up with many hilarious ways to express his punk self. As a much younger man, Zale made his way across the states from his home in San Diego, California, to Boston, Massachusetts, to study for a doctorate in neuroscience. But as well as cramming his brain, he was developing his funny muscle at the same time. Zale embarked on a sideline stand-up career, and he quickly made a name for himself around the New England area's comedy circuit. Upon graduation, Zale's sense of humor became his main focus, and he became a full-time funny man. He earned accolades from the likes of Comedy Central, which named him one of its comics to watch in 2016. Increasingly, Zale divided his time between the entertainment capitals of New York and Los Angeles, California. And it was in the Golden State where Zale would make his latest hilarious statement from a trip to the DMV. On January 28, 2018, the comedian began a thread on Twitter. He tweeted, "Recently moved back to California and had to get a new driver's license. This is my story." Of course, a new license meant posing for an updated photo that would be printed on the government-issued card. Zale explained on the social media site that he wanted to take advantage of his relatively longer hair and lack of mustache in the refreshed image. But it turned out that Zale had no intention of using his flowing locks and clean-shaven look as part of his new DMV image. Instead, the prankster headed to the hairdressers. "My idea would need a lot of steps to transform this wholesome young boy," he tweeted. Next, the funny man shared an image of himself with his mane in foil, a telltale sign he was coloring his hair. The ripples of aluminum combined with the black salon robe made Zale think he looked like a Supreme Court justice, as he described himself on Twitter. But would he be found guilty of a tonsorial fashion crime? Once the foil was removed, the full glory of Zale's new bleached blonde hair was revealed. The comedian described his new voluminous side-swept style as Mean Surfer No. 7, uncredited, Point Break 1991. An imaginary extra for the film starring Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, but the look was very in-your-face in reality. Sure, the blitz bleach style was shocking, but Zale was nowhere near finished his punk styling process. Next, he had the hairdresser add a splash of scarlet dye, leaving just a bit of the blonde exposed. At that stage, the stand-up compared himself to pop star Aaron Carter if he were to become a birthday clown after his album tanks. A few extra strong hair products were undoubtedly used to complete the next outrage for Zale's hair. His dyed locks were swooped skywards into a shape similar to horns. Even with this extreme look, the comedian was not happy and still had finishing touches to add. The final phase, as Zale called it on Twitter, involved a bit of makeup and a few accessories to transform him into a true punk. Now he was geared up to kick them in the curb down at the good old DMV. But needless to say, the unsuspecting employee who had the zany Zale in her line gave the comedian a funny look. When Zale's number was called, the female staffer compared the picture on his old license with his fresh punky image. She then told her client, "You're going to need a new photo. You look nothing like your last California ID." This was understandable, as once upon a time, the comedian had rocked a mustache and mullet. Indeed, that little exchange at the DMV was a small clue that Zale was no novice at this sort of thing. And it turned out that he was by no means the only one to commit such a stunt. He tweeted that, in fact, his father had started the trend way back in the 1970s. And the very particular sense of humor must have run in the family because all of his members would go on to use similar snaps for their visual ID. And Zale explained on all Twitter, he wrote, "My family has a tradition of being officially documented by the government as characters because they don't know we're not those people." He then proved this by sharing a photo of his brother, who went full hippie in his last visit to the DMV. So to carry on the tradition, all the stand-up had to do was sit down for his new DMV photo. Unfortunately, Zale did not get the exact shot he envisioned. When taking the official photo, the picture person didn't let me snarl my lip, he reported to his Twitter followers. Nevertheless, despite not being able to utilize his punky snarl, Zalay still had plenty of anarchistic attitude left to deploy. The funny man next had the serious prospect of a written driving test. Apparently, he barely passed due to an interesting answer. As Zalay recounted on Twitter, it asked, "Did you know you're not allowed to park in front of your own driveway?" I said you could because F the government. However, at the end of the day, Zalay successfully earned his license, which he reported would be sent to him soon. He summed up his experience in a further Twitter entry. He tweeted, "I got a punk driver's license even though I am not punk, but it's a prank on the lame government, so technically I am punk?" Of course, posting his experience online opened the comedian up to plenty of commentary. With this in mind, Zalay added a disclaimer about his wacky humor at the bottom of his Twitter thread. And it was a pretty woke move from the comedian. Zalay wrote, "I acknowledge this is only something a white guy can do." The funny man now played it straight. He added, "I think that's tragic and want every person, regardless of race, religion, or gender, to have this frivolous of a relationship with people who check their IDs." Zalay announced that he had set up a fundraiser so followers could contribute to the fight against new voter ID laws in North Carolina. The comedian had one last gift to give those following his license application saga via Twitter. On January 22nd, 2018, he received his ID in the mail, and the picture did not disappoint. But despite his best efforts with his punk makeover, Zalay's new card still described him as having brown hair.